Okay, so let's get started on the Giacometti sculpture really quickly. You can see that I've got this ready to go. I've got my sculpture on the base, multiple wires holding up the legs. I've wrapped these around each other. So I've got 4 wires holding up the legs. I've got a nice firm body, good arms. The head is not as important because I'm just gonna put some paper towels in here to kind of fill the mass in on that. And notice I also have him look like he's walking. He's got some movement to him. So I'm trying to do that because I want him to show some movement. I don't want him to be a standing man. I want him to be a walking man. Okay, so my sculpture armature is ready to go. So the next thing I need to do is just create a little bit of mass in his head. And I can do this a couple different ways, but I found that this way works pretty good for me. Just taking a little piece of paper or a paper towel and sticking it up in the head right here, sticking it up in the wires. And I don't want to really build a lot of mass on there, just a little bit of mass. And I'm just trying to create something for my concrete to stick to. Okay, sometimes I can just stick it up there and leave it alone. Sometimes you might need a little bit of tape. It might take just a little bit of tape to hold it in there, but don't wrap it all with tape. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to get it in there to hold until I can get some concrete on it. And I can go ahead and put concrete on there pretty quick here. Also in my feet, I might want to take a little bit of this paper towel and stick it in my feet so I can give them a little bit of mass there. And I'm just going to stick a little paper towel in there and kind of shove it in the spot there. And I'm going to put concrete on this, so don't worry about that. I mean, it's going to look a lot different. I'm just kind of creating a little bit of mass. And you can use paper or paper towel, whatever you have will be fine. And again, I'm just kind of sitting it in here, sticking it in the wires a little bit, creating just a little bit of mass so my concrete doesn't go right through those wires. Okay, I've got this little container of concrete here, and you notice this is about 1/3 of the way full. I don't want it any more than 1/3 of the way full. That's the maximum, like 1/4 to 1/3 full, and that's as much as you want in there because it would be too much. Now I've got a little bit of water and a brush, and I'm going to start mixing some water in. And I want to mix this first batch so it's a little bit thick because I need it to stick to the wires. After that, I want it to go a little bit thinner. So this may be, and just put a tiny bit of water in there. And remember, when you put the water in there, just put a tiny bit. I mean, you just need a tiny bit and it'll mix up pretty good. And actually I have this pretty thin, a little thinner than I wanted it to be. So you can kind of see it here. It's like a thin milkshake. I wanted more of a thick milkshake consistency, so I put too much water in. And notice in my water here, in my cup, I just put a tiny bit in, just a fraction of this, maybe like 20% of it in there, and it's too much. So you just need a tiny bit of water for this. And I'm going to mix it up really well with my brush. Now, once I mix it up with my brush, and I feel like it's nice and mixed, I don't have any little dry pockets of cement in there, and I might have some in the corner. I'm trying to dig them out. Then I'm going to start painting it on. So now it's a matter of just painting it on here. And I'm moving my paper there, but we'll get it to stick in the right place here in a minute. It keeps falling over. And you could just take your paintbrush and paint it right on there. And so I'm just going to start painting all my wires and start painting a coat of the cement on there. And around my foot, I'm just going to let it hang here on here and sit on my foot. And I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue to just keep putting cement on this. And it may run down a little bit, that's fine. It's going to be a little bit runny at first. That's perfectly fine. And I'm just going to coat the whole thing with cement. So I'm trying to build up the mass. I'm trying to put some cement in these wires and around these wires to build it up. And you will have some dripping, not a big problem. Dripping is not an issue. It's going to do some of that. If it's on your board and you don't like it, just scrape it off. There goes a drip right there. And if I'd got it a little thicker, which I intended to do, it might be a little bit better for this first coat. I like it a little bit thinner for this, for the second and third coat. Usually I like to have 3 to 4 coats on here. I think that's probably best, depending on how thin they are. So if they're a little thin, maybe 4 will be best. But, and I've had more than that before. I've had more than 4 coats, but usually by about the 4th coat, you're pretty good. And maybe you can do some touch up. And this is just thin set cement used for tiling. That's what they use it for tiling. You could use other materials too. We used to use plaster, and it worked pretty well. But I feel like this is stronger. So I like this a little bit better. But basically it acts about the same way on the sculpture. So I'm just continuing to add my cement. And it might take a while to use up all this cement. And I can scoop it off of this base if I need to. If I get a lot of drips, just grab it with your brush and scoop it off. Now remember that your sculpture should be about, I don't know, 10 inches high or so. 12 maximum. I don't want it to be super giant. So 10 to 12 inches is the height that I would prefer. It's a good size for the amount of wire that I gave you, and it's a good size for the sculpture, for the materials. I may want to get, before I run out of it, I may want to start on the head a little bit to hold this paper in here. Just enough to kind of hold the paper in so the next time you put another coat on, it's got some on there and it'll hold the paper in good. So I want to get 1 coat on the head, or at least a little on the head, just to hold that paper in place. Later, I will add to this and completely cover it. But for now, I'm just worried about, see, it's coming out right there. We want to get it to hold into place. So if it starts to come out, just push it back in there. And that's normal. Like I said, you can put a little tape on there, but don't wrap it with tape, because this cement needs something to grab to, and if you make it all like sealed up and nothing, no wrinkles or nothing to grab to, it's hard for it to stick. So some people want to put tape on the whole thing, and it's not a good idea to do it. You can put a little piece of tape to hold it on, but just keep it to a minimum, because just this thin set just doesn't want to grab to that tape. It doesn't want to stick. So that's why we want to keep the tape to a minimum. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to have to get my fingers a little dirty here, grabbing onto this thin set. But I don't want this head to be a huge ball of cement here. It would be super heavy too, and it'd weigh down my sculpture. Oh no, my head fell out. Let's just stick that back in there. And again, that's why the first coat of cement is really important. It kind of holds this on here, and we put more cement on there, and then we're good. Okay, so maybe that's enough on the head for now. I'm always tempted to work on it because it needs a lot of coats. So it's very tempting to want to keep going back and working on that part. Now, if you're getting done at the end and you got a little bit more cement left, you can always put it on the head or the foot because it needs a lot of cement. But if you could try to get all the wires covered at least a little bit for your first coat, that would be best. And then you just have to let it sit and wait. And you have to let it dry. So it might take a little bit of time to dry. You know, you come back the next day, it's plenty dry, and you can start another coat. So going at this pace right here, at this thickness here, I feel like 4 coats probably do it. Usually, I mean, sometimes if it's really thick, you can do 3 coats, but usually it's 4 coats is the best. And like I said, I've seen some kids do like 6 coats, depending on how thick and how smooth they want their sculpture. If you want it a little smoother, you start thinning down the coats as you go, and it gives you a much smoother sculpture. And if you want it to be more rough, thicker coats will make it more rough. So I will have a quiz for today for this lesson. So I'll make this into a video, and then I will make the quiz for it, and you just have to watch the video and take the quiz. I call it a quiz, but it really is just some questions you have to answer. Quiz is like you have to study. This you don't even have to study. You just have to watch the video and answer the question. So yeah, I call it a quiz. I probably should change the name of that because that's not a very accurate word for what it is. It's more of a, I don't know, questions to be answered. So I'm running out of thin set now. I've got just a little bit left, and I'm gonna try to get it on, and then I'm gonna let this dry. And 24 hours later, I'll come back and add another coat. So I don't know if I'll add another coat in your class or the next class, but 24 hours you can add another coat. And don't worry that if it's not all filled, it will be eventually. Keep smoothing. Okay, so as for my sculpture today, I think I'm gonna call this a day and let it dry. And if I want, I can scrape off this stuff off the bottom here, clean this up. I can do that later too when it dries. I'm still able to scrape it until it's sealed. You know, I can kind of scrape it. It's like sand almost. So that is the first coat of my thin set cement on my sculpture. I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'll come back 24 hours later and put another coat on. And I'm gonna try to get at least 4 coats on there. That's my goal, 4 coats, and then we'll see from there. It might need more, it might be fine, but usually you get 4 on there, you're pretty good. And my head here, I got it to stay, but we'll see when I come back. Hopefully it's still good, and I can put another coat on there, and I'm okay. And I've covered up most of the big gaps with the cement, and by the next time I put another coat on, I should get almost all of them filled. And now to clean up, you can just wash these in the water. If you have a lot of this cement, scrape it in the trash first. If you have a lot left over, scrape it in the trash first, and then wash it, because you don't want to wash this all down the drain. And wash this cup up in the brush, and then you can use the same cup and brush next time. Okay.